Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Diabetes Tour Guide. I am your host, Andy. I've been living with type 1 diabetes for almost 19 years. I've been a physician assistant for almost 5 years now. Time is flying. So I know that diabetes, just like medicine, is not one size fits all. And so we're going to be along this tour to find out what's new and also what's old about diabetes in all of its types. And I'm actually really excited to talk to you today about a pretty big subject that we're going to combine into a very small segment because I think it's important. So I'm going to start off with a case study. So case studies for you that are not medical just means that when a patient comes in, they become your case. And so you kind of get interesting cases that come along the way. And I had one recently of a 22-year-old female who's been dealing with GI issues for about 6 years on and off. She got diagnosed with diabetes maybe 6 months ago, 6 to 8 months ago, with an A1C of 12%, which A1C just means how much sugar is sticking to the red blood cell. Anything over 6.5 means you have diabetes, but the type is interesting. She's not technically super young, so we don't know if this is the type 1, which used to be called juvenile onset, or is this the adult version? So what else would we have drawn? We would have drawn insulin to see if she's still making it. And she is. She's still making insulin, which means that she's not insulin deficient. Does this necessarily mean she's type 1 or type 2? So she started taking some type 2 diabetes medications, which brought down her A1C to 6%, but she's still having a lot of problems. GI problems are still existent. She still doesn't feel that great and feels kind of fluctuant with her thyroid, fluctuant with her blood sugars. She's actually having a lot of thyroid symptoms too. I thought it was important to draw antibodies on this patient. This is how she presented to me. She's like, these are the labs I've done. I'm just curious to know what else I need to do. So I drew the type 1 associated autoantibodies for autoimmunity, or antibodies for autoimmunity. And she was positive for them. So this totally changes her trajectory. She does not have type 2 diabetes. She has either type 1 or type 1.5. Technically, type 1.5 is latent onset autoimmune diabetes of adults. So you're looking at a juvenile diabetes onset with antibodies, meaning this is autoimmune. Your body is attacking itself at a later date. So it's important to know because that changes her trajectory. She's no longer, that insulin she's making will soon, someday, maybe not soon, go because we have antibodies associated. So today's episode is on antibodies associated with autoimmune diabetes, whether it be in traditional type 1 or type 1.5, where you're in that mid zone of adult onset but autoimmune diabetes. So the things that you draw, and I actually have a list right here, and it's going to be on our green screen as well. The typical antibodies are something called islet cell antibodies, or ICA, insulin antibodies, or IAA, glutamic acid decarboxylase antibody, which is GAD, or GAD65, insulinoma-associated antigens 2, which is IA2A and IA2 beta A. And then the last one is zinc transporter 8, or ZNT8A. So those are all the acronyms and the full names for the antibodies associated with autoimmunity. You just have to have one positive antibody to have autoimmunity associated with it. So with this particular case, it changes our trajectory because now we have to think about her immune system and not just sensitizing insulin. Because the insulin that she made, she was positive for insulin on a blood test, positive for C-peptide, which means she has active insulin. She's still positive for it, but we now need to preserve that. So it changes treatment modalities for it. But really what I want you to know is autoimmune diabetes is different than non-autoimmune diabetes, which sounds redundant, but that means that one can kill off your insulin and the other one is insulin resistance. Those are the big two differentiations between diabetes is insulin deficiency, insulin resistance. And that changes how you do it. If you don't have any insulin, then you need to give insulin or preserve the insulin that you have. Insulin resistance is you need to sensitize the insulin, make it work better for you. And there's different treatment modalities for both. So I think studying this is good. And two, if you're a medical provider and you have patients that you're unsure about what type of diabetes they may have, draw antibodies. This is wildly important because if you have antibodies with this type of autoimmunity, it can make you susceptible to others. This particular patient also was positive for TPO and for TRAB. Those are thyroid Hashimoto's related autoantibodies. So it totally changes her treatment modality too, and what we're thinking about for her longevity with chronic illness. I hope that wasn't too confusing. If you have any questions about antibodies, I love talking about this. In future episodes, we may talk about genotypes or genomes. There's something called HLA-DR and HLA-DQ, where you kind of have the particular pattern that then makes these types of antibodies that then get activated later on in life. It's kind of a cascade with autoimmunity. And two, it's just taking a deeper dive along the diabetes tour guide. Please comment, subscribe, ask questions. If there's a subject that you want to know or talk about on this particular podcast, or if you want to be a guest on our interview portions, we would love, love, love to have you. Thank you, and I hope you join us along the Diabetes Tour Guide as we make more stops along the way. Have a good one.